Hi, Monika. Thanks for joining me today for this discussion.
Hi, Mick. Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you at Global Citizen.
So we join in today, and this is something we've both done a lot of work around, working with Ban Ki-moon and through the work of Global Citizen around the world. But we're really here to talk about climate change today and the impact it's had on agriculture and really the entire food system around the world. You know, the world right now is faced with challenges on multiple fronts. We've got a climate crisis, we've got natural resource depletion, we've got biodiversity loss, we've got rapidly rising hunger, poverty, and inequality, all made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, farmers, they're really at the front lines of this. They account for 2/3 of the world's poor across Africa, particularly in rural areas, and they're on the front lines of climate change. And yet they are also key to any real significant reduction in emissions. So they're part of the solution, but also bearing the brunt of this huge crisis at the moment. And really, it's a tragedy because only a small fraction of all the billions that is getting poured into shifting the world to a more greener, sustainable future, only a small fraction of that amount goes to supporting farmers to adapt to the challenges of climate change and to thrive. And so we've often spoken about this, investing in these communities, ensuring that these farmers on the front lines are more resistant, whether it's to drought, extreme weather events, whether it's to change in rainfall patterns, but how can we support them in terms of getting access to the knowledge, the tools, and frankly, the equipment such as, early warning weather systems, how we can increase support for that. And so Ban Ki-moon, and through his work on the Global Commission on Adaptation, he's always stressed that investments in farmers, in assisting those adapt to the impacts of climate change is what's going to yield higher returns over the long term. And as part of that, he's called on governments and philanthropists and corporations to invest in ensuring that a fraction of the billions could reach the most vulnerable. And this is something which we at Global Citizen are excited to partner with the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens on, to champion this, to call on governments to act over the next 2 years, but also really to tell those everyday stories of the communities, families, and farmers who are on the front lines. I saw it just before the pandemic. I was in Sierra Leone and saw firsthand, some of these remarkable stories, and really call on leaders to stand in solidarity and invest in the research, the science that's going to improve their lives. And so with that introduction, I want to ask you, I guess, the ever-present question with all of these crises going on. We've got an economic crisis, a hunger crisis, a poverty crisis, a climate crisis. But how do we prioritize? And is it possible to tackle all of these facets and emerge successfully and recover better together?
We have to recover better together, definitely. And what seems evident from the pandemic, as we have experienced it now and are still in the midst of it, is food and the food systems are paramount to all of the challenges we face, be it health, be it poverty, be it hunger, be it climate, be it nature, be it sustainable development. So there is a key, and we have to use it to unlock the problem. So food systems on the one hand, and yet food production on the other hand. So how can we have climate sustainable, smart agricultural food production to guarantee that everyone has the right good food, nutritious food available as population of the world is increasing? As you probably know, Mick, we are looking at a 50% increase in food demand in the decades to come. And we are looking at losing about 30% of the yields because of climate change. So we do need to adapt. We need to adapt food systems. We need to adapt the food production. We need to adapt agriculture. And as you pointed out correctly, it is small farmers that need to be supported. Now, how to do that? There are multiple suggestions to do that. Of course, we need to invest more in research and innovation. We also need to make sure that the money is reaching the furthest away, the last mile. We need to be able to transform food systems to cater to the wide global population. And as a side effect, agriculture that is responsible for a quarter of carbon emissions. And hence, adaptation will be a key to our efforts. So what do we need to prioritize on? It's very much elevating agricultural adaptation. It's very much supporting smallholder farmers at the last mile. And it is very much getting the world down on its fever that we are currently already experiencing. Mick, I know that Global Citizen has recently just launched a recovery plan. So how does that campaign actually cater to exactly these issues?
Well, it's interesting, Monika, and it relates to what you were just saying. You were talking about, farmers both bearing the brunt of climate change, but also agriculture itself needs to be part of the solution. And it also can play a critical role in the solution to address extreme poverty. The last few years through the pandemic, we've seen the number of people living in poverty start to rise. By the end of this year, it's estimated that at least 160 million people will be pushed back into extreme poverty as a result of the pandemic. And when you look at our farmers, often, farmers are critical to producing food, but often even they struggle in some of these communities made worse by the pandemic and also climate change. They struggle to produce enough to feed their own families, let alone produce enough to make a profit and, create jobs, hire people, thrive, not just survive, and ultimately feed communities around them. And so investing in agriculture, investing in farmers isn't just critical to addressing climate change, it's also critical to ending extreme poverty. It could be one of the main source of jobs, one of the main source of addressing hunger as well. So it's critical we stand in solidarity and use the recovery from the pandemic really to jumpstart investments in agriculture and in particular farmers on the front line. And that's why when we launched our recovery plan for the world earlier this year in February, and we had over 23 governments, we had the support of President Biden's special envoy on climate change, John Kerry. When we had this support and we launched this recovery plan, we said very critically that investing in farmers needs to be part of this. And so we laid out a number of calls to action to ensure that the world works to address the health impacts of the pandemic for everyone, and also that we want to ensure that we address all the socio-economic and environmental hardships, not least those facing farmers. And so what we outlined was a proposal to end the hunger crisis and achieve food security and improve nutrition for all. And what we also said is, look, research and innovation is crucial to delivering the solutions required to both fight hunger and urgently address climate change. And so we've been calling on businesses, philanthropists, corporations, governments to act. Of course, we've been calling on citizens as the major agent of change to also use their voices, call on leaders to deliver. Our goal is through our campaign this year, we want to see if we can mobilize commitments at least to the tune of $250 million to urgently support what we think it will be about 5 million of the world's most vulnerable farmers on the front lines, largely to guarantee access to food for local populations and address local disruptions of food flows. And if we do that, we can get government standing up. We think it can be a powerful example, particularly as we head over the next 6 months into the COP climate discussions taking place in Glasgow. It's not enough that those discussions just focus on ways to reduce emissions. The reality is climate change is happening right now. It's already having an impact. When I was in Sierra Leone, I spoke to farmers about how unpredictable rainfalls was reducing their crop yield, which in turn was reducing the amount of food they have on the table, or the amount of money that they could make, the amount of local jobs that they could employ for. So this is having an impact, and that message needs to be put forward. And we need the wealthiest governments to stay true to their promise that they made 10 years ago in Copenhagen, that they reiterated in Paris. And that is that if we are going to ask all countries to reduce emissions, there has to be hope for the most vulnerable. And they pledged billions of dollars to help countries adapt. And unfortunately, to date, that promise hasn't been kept. And we need governments to make good on their word, to support especially those on the front lines, to farmers. And so that's really the message that we will be taking to the G20 summit, to the COP Paris discussions later this year, and urging the world to stand in solidarity, because climate change is happening right now, and our action needs to begin already to address the impacts that we're seeing taking place. And so that's what we're doing. But of course, it starts with citizens using their voice and taking action. And so throughout the coming months, we're going to be having a number of actions for our citizens to take. We're also going to be having a number of new rewards that they can earn as they learn more about this issue and take action as well. And so, you know, I'm inviting everyone to stand with us, use their voice, don't be a bystander, and call on our leaders to act.
Wonderful. Mick, this sounds so exciting. I will join the campaign, definitely. The Ban Ki-moon Center will do its utmost. We are adding our voice, not only with Ban Ki-moon, our co-chair, and he's also co-chair of the Center on Adaptations. So definitely we are there with you. And we also encourage everyone around who is eager to make the climate crisis less of a crisis, and to help those that are most in need to add their voices. And it's amazing to hear that you have rewards even in store. Agriculture, adaptation needs to be a focus, because as I said, the world has fever. We need to do everything to get that one right.
And
so
we don't know, Monika, we don't know all the answers, and that's okay. Like
True.
A lot of this, we don't know how we're going to reduce emissions and adapt. And that's why, you know, we need leaders to invest in the research, the science, the innovation, as you said, but we need to put this issue on the agenda and collectively put funding in to ensure we come up with these solutions if we're to address this for everyone. And, you know, I know this has been something that Ban Ki-moon called for in his various reports, but we need leaders to hear that message too.
I totally agree. And with that, I think, dear global citizens, step up the game. I do hope for your support. I know Global Citizen is counting on your support. You are an army of good in this regard and in many others. So thank you for your contributions.
Thank you, Monika. Thanks for chatting with me today.